If your room smells like spoiled leftovers, you have weird mold growing in your paint mug, and you have bits of gray plastic stuck in your stained carpet, you're not dirty, you're cultivating Nurgle's garden, which explains why you're watching this video, as we continue to celebrate Nurgle's November, a whole month dedicated to the Plague Lord. So if you want lore videos, terrain tutorials, and episodes of the Greater Wog in veneration of Grandpapa Nurgle, subscribe to the channel. Today we explore your hobby room. Nurgle's realm. Like all realms within the warp, the Plague Lord's domain cannot be fathomed by our puny human brains. Those that have entered the land of the Plague Lord struggle to comprehend the perverse yet strangely beautiful world Nurgle has created for himself. The few scrolls and tomes that describe his home compare it to a garden, where Nurgle nurtures a self-sustainable ecosystem of filth, rot, and decay. Like a normal garden, the domain of Nurgle is home to a bewildering array of flora and fauna, all interconnected and supporting the whole. Beds of bright blue shovel petal plants dig themselves up and leave the dirt in which they grew so that plague bearers can plant new skull seeds in their rich loam. As the skull seeds grow and blossom, they attract bounding, stomping, over-exuberant beasts of Nurgle that mistake their fruits for the heads of new playthings. This scatters their matter violently into the air, where it comes to rest on the wings of the ubiquitous rotflies. Slowed by the sticky pulp of the splattered plants, these insects become easy prey for other flying creatures that ingest them as they soar through the rot-choked air. Unbeknownst to the predators, blotflies are carriers of many of Nurgle's experimental diseases and other creations. With their innards thus infected, these predators sicken, vomiting the contents of their guts all across the garden as they fly about, and eventually explode in showers of life-giving flesh and blood. This bounty of mutated and mutilated tissue falls into new areas of the garden beneath, decaying into compost and starting the cycle of life and death anew. Though the Garden of Nurgle does share certain commonalities with the gardens and jungles on planets in real space, it's still not a worldly garden in any sane sense. A visitor in this bizarre and perilous realm doesn't walk from place to place. They experience what needs to be experienced. Even the demons that tend to the garden are not really what might be thought of as a workforce that arrives at a place, does a job, and leaves. These demons are a part of the experience of the Garden of Nurgle itself. This is especially troublesome for the plague bearers, whose metamorphosized minds were once mortals and still strive to impose some type of reality in this unreal existence. Still, even the plague bearers accept their place in the garden and spend their eternity enjoying all it has to offer. Just another example how the Plague Father affords all his children the many ways to explore and appreciate his realm, and even to become part of it. Though he is a god of chaos, he also has a need to create order, to monitor his creations, and to control his experiments. A visitor to Nurgle's realm would find a dizzying amount of diversity of experiences. Here they might find a tree made out of nothing but the flesh of Eldari, constantly oozing the tears of a dying race. There they might find fields where tongues sprout out from the earth, each one blistered by a new influence of a different infection. There is no telling what wonders await around each bend in the path that stretches and winds throughout the gardens of Nurgle, but any who encounter them will surely have their sanities tested and questioned. While the mortal realm is laid waste by blight and pestilence, the lands of Nurgle and the realm of chaos thrive on disease and corruption. Tended by the Lord of Decay, this unwholesome realm is home to every pox and affliction imaginable, and its foe tide with a stench of rot. Twisted, rotten bout entangles with grasping vines over the moldering ground, entwining little broken fingers. Fungi, both plain and spectacular, break through the squelched mulch of the forest floor, puffing out clouds of choking spores. In this realm, the stems of half-demonic plants wave on their own accord, unstirred by the insect-choked air. Human-featured beetles walk along the banks of sluggish, muddy rivers. Reeds rattle, whispering the names of the poxes inflicted upon the worlds of mortals, or lamenting those that have died from the caress of their creator. There is a house of decay at the center of Nurgle's realm. Its racked and twisted structure creaks and groans under the influence of the baleful toxic winds. Shutters cling just barely to windows framed only half filled with broken panels of filth-covered glass. Sewage drains spill forth beetles, maggots, and twisted centipedes with only tongues for their bodies and human fingers for legs. Paint continuously cracks and peels away from the wood beneath, yet the house never loses its gray-green hue. Along the roof, hundreds of chimneys bellow out dark clouds that upon closer inspection are composed of millions of floating, buzzing flies. All around this house, trees made out of bone bear fruit that rot even as it swells. Leafless boughs of these ancient trees provide shelter for demonic birds that sing the funeral dirges of any unwelcome visitor. It is a house of pestilence, rot, and death. This is Nurgle's mansion, and that means that it is also a place of hope and renewal. There can be no explanation for the strength that keeps this structure from collapsing, except that it is a dwelling place for the Lord of all, whose boundless energy, sense of eternal purpose, and limitless joy for his work finds perfect peace with the inevitability of decay. Within his mansion of tumbling walls, Nurgle toils. Beneath mildewed and sagging beams, the great god works for eternity at a rusted cauldron, a receptacle vast enough to contain all of the oceans of the worlds. Chuckling and murmuring to himself, Nurgle labors to create contagions and pestilences, the most sublime and unfettered form of life. With every stir of Nurgle's maggot-riddled ladle, a dozen fresh diseases flourish and are scattered throughout the stars. From time to time, Nurgle reaches down with a clawed hand to scoop a portion of the ghastly mixture into his cavernous mouth, tasting the fruits of his labor. With each passing day, he comes closer to brewing his perfect disease, a spiritual plague that will spread across the eternity of the universe and see all living things gather onto his rotting embrace. Dwarfed by their mighty lord, a host of plague-bearers are gathered all about Nurgle, each chant sonorously, keeping count of the diseases created, the mischievous Nurglings that have hatched, and the souls claimed by the Lord of Decay's putrid blessing. His hum drowns out the creaking of the rotten floor and the scraping of the ladle on the cauldron, so eternal in his monotony that to hear it is to invite madness. When not at his cauldron, Nurgle himself often sits in a massive chair just outside of the mansion's front door. From there, he entreats visitors both summoned and unexpected to approach, share tales and questionable libations, and explore the countless rooms within. Inside the vast structure, a guest could easily become lost. Rotten floorboards send many to their doom of a slow consumption by the carrion feeders that dwell in the lower levels. Grand staircases decorated with moth-eaten rugs beckon to a wandering soul, leading them to chambers where demons are glad to receive new, fresh flesh. Should the guests bypass these rooms and continue upward, they might find their way to the attic, where Nurgle keeps samples of his works of decay, cataloged and counted over and over again by attendant plague-bearers. In this attic are jars containing the viscera of plague victims from across time and space. Souls are trapped within apparently simple glass containers, left to slowly dim and fade as the maladies of the spirit waste them to the bone. If the visitor walks past the stairs and pushes deeper into the mansion, they might stumble upon the kitchen and the larders of the Plague Lord's home. Every foul ingredient, every pestilent component imaginable rest on the shelves here, neatly labeled and ready to be combined in the great cauldron. A wise guest will move on quickly from here, knowing that to linger is to become flavoring for the noxious stew, for this cauldron is among Nurgle's prized possession and he likes to keep it full. Nurgle is a creative being and he will take inspiration for experimentations where he finds it. Seldom can he resist the temptation to add nearby visitors to his virulent concoctions. This also goes to show how Nurgle is unlike any of the other ruinous powers, including how he views his domain within the realm of chaos. Khorne, for instance, rarely leaves his throne, barking orders to his generals from atop his mountain of skulls. Slaanesh watches the happenings of his kingdom from within his palace of pleasure, or wanders the universe seeking to tempt mortals into giving up their souls to satisfy his hunger. Tzeentch seems not to care much at all of the state of his warped and fractured land, spending his time plotting and interfering with affairs in realms beyond his own. Nurgle, on the other hand, cherishes the beauty and the surprise of his garden. He routinely takes strolls down its twisted paths, speaking with his demons and stopping to observe one of the many diseases take its toll on a wounded captive. Nurgle is in touch with his land and its many regions. In his wandering outside of the mansion, he passes by some of his favorite places, many of which have existed since Nurgle first thought of them and are likely to be the models for the reborn universe that is to come. A moment's journey from the mansion are the deathbeds, a place he visits more often than perhaps any other. It is a place that serves two purposes. Not only are wayward travelers and defeated invaders trapped here, stored in the deep pits and sucking muck of this place, awaiting some future foul use or their eventual demise, but it is here that Nurgle can indulge in one of his greatest forms of entertainment. The Plague Lord loves to hear the stories of the realms beyond his own. They inspire him to create new pestilences that are well suited to other lands, and in the deathbeds he has countless potential storytellers. Sometimes he offers these unfortunates the chance to improve their position by spitting the worms from their mouths and sharing the tales of their worlds with him.
Those who amuse him sufficiently are plucked from the muck and removed to the mansion. There they have the great honor of becoming vessels to Nurgle's newest plagues. Once they have been properly infected, Grandfather Nurgle smiles, gives them one last tender, gut-churning embrace, and sends them back into the lands that the stories described. After visiting the deathbeds, Nurgle often makes the poxyards the next stop on his stroll. It is here that he tests the efficiency of his contagions of the flesh and the spirit. Each malady requires a different set of trials to gauge its ability to achieve the Plague Lord's desires. This means that the physical form of the poxyards changes to suit the task. For the test of the spirit, this region of the garden may be filled with crystal clear lakes. A dehydrated test subject may see these lakes and believe salvation is at hand. Drink deeply of the cool water, and suddenly the water will turn to pus, tormenting the sick and weakening the soul. For a test of skin-eating diseases, the poxyards may be filled with claw thruster brambles. Infected captives will be sent running into the demon plants, chased by beasts of Nurgle. If the captives scream as they pass through the razor-edged branches of the plant, then Nurgle knows that the poor wretches can still feel pain, and his affliction needs refinement. No matter the incarnation of the poxyards, this corner of the garden always gives Nurgle new insights, and therefore he spends a great deal of time here. In addition to the mainstay regions of the land of the Plague Lord, there are many others that enjoy a less permanent existence, coming and going with the passing of one of Nurgle's many plagues. Some of these likely only exist in the nightmare visions and untrustworthy hallucinations of disease-ravaged minds. Still, the Garden of Nurgle is near infinite, and it is not so unbelievable that a recipient of one of Nurgle's great gifts might be blessed with the fleeting glimpse of one of the Plague Lord's realms. With their last dying breath, some mortals gasp and choke out words, saying that they can hear the faint bells tolling. Perhaps they refer to the blossoms that grow in the death bell lily fields. When a mortal dies as a result of one of Nurgle's many diseases, one of these pallid flowers opens up and emits a tiny chime to mark the success of Nurgle's handiwork. The hanging gardens of Thushbolg are a sight to be seen. This remote slice of Nurgle's realm was given over to the great unclean one Thushbolg, as acknowledgement of his use of the choking plague to wipe out the orc infestation on Horax, a planet that Nurgle coveted. To commemorate his victory and to demonstrate constant thanks to his lord for his reward, Thushbolg uses his own intestines to hang every single orc from the colony and the trees of his domain. There they dangle and rot, slowly dying but never quite finding release. In other places in the garden, plague bearers toss organs from the bodies of disease victims into sorting pools, making it easier for them to count the numbers that have died from each ailment. Beasts of Nurgle frolic in the fields where planted spines yield crops of dementia-inducing foodstuff. Nurglings crackle with glee as they roll down hillsides that form spontaneously when great unclean ones vomit up regimens that they consumed thousands of years ago. The land of the Plague Lord is a wondrous place filled with vitality, mirth, and the experience beyond mortal comprehension. It is a playground for the minions of the Lord of Decay, a laboratory for his works, and a conforming home for a god that knows his realm is the shape of things to come.
And that's Nurgle's realm. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel, and if you have any suggestions or questions about Grandfather Nurgle, comment down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for listening. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.